a lot of costs in going to court to get the judgments and so on. And actually we end up with the worst of all worlds. Someone who is a tenant who is evicted with county court judgments against them, so no one is going to give them property because they didn't pay their rent or they were evicted for some reason. So they have that problem. So the whole idea here is that if a landlord serves a Section 21 notice, well, we all know what that is. I don't know if all members of the audience does, but a Section 21 notice on the tenant, they can take that to the local authority and say, look, I am going to be homeless. And about 47% of people that become homeless become homeless because of the end of an assured short-term tenancy. The aim here is that instead of going through the court process, incurring costs for the landlord, incurring costs for the tenant, and indeed making the tenant almost unable to get anywhere.
And for a court system that is...
And of course, overburdening the court system, the local authority will then say, okay, fine, let's work on this. First thing what the local authority can do is to phone up the landlord and say, look, can we extend the tenancy? That'd be the first thing. The landlord may say no, because I want to sell the property, or it may be that the landlord wants to live in the property. You know, that's another reason. Or they may want to do the property up, whatever the reason is. Or alternatively, it can be, yes, we can renew the tenancy, but we need to change the terms.
So Section 21 puts it in jurisdiction.
Okay, no, sorry, one more question.
I wanted to answer your point.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My name's Molly. I work for Crisis, a brilliant charity.
Yes.
I'm not here to speak on behalf of Crisis, but I work for them. So I work directly with a lot of these people who are homeless. And I take your point about gangs renting properties to... I've got a student who's in that situation. One of the things that, you know, throughout what they come and tell me, Crisis is brilliant in that sense. Please don't, you know, they will try and find them a hostel or what have you. But throughout all of this, and I'm just an IT tutor, what I feel is missing is an effective monitoring system. It's not there. You know, to monitor certain developments at certain stages. You talk about Section 21. I have somebody going through that at this moment. He's homeless. You know, it's very difficult for somebody who's homeless to get somewhere else to stay in terms of private, you know, tenancy, because they don't have a history. And their history isn't very, you know, it isn't what, you know, like any one of us who's working or who's not working but got a history of being able to pay bills and stuff, they have a hard time. So, you know, I think there needs to be a monitoring system, you know, and at the moment, this time of the year, Christmas, I tell you, it's really hard. It's very hard. So I think there needs to be consideration or some, you know, monitoring process, effective monitoring process.
Yeah, so are we equipped really to deal with the issue in terms of should we introduce monitoring steps to would you like to
so
answer that?
I suppose I'm going to do a weird thing and be nice about the Tories.
You're surrounded.
Don't say it quietly, say it loudly.
No, so I suppose one good thing that came out of the housing white paper was the idea of longer tenancies.
Yeah.
And that was something which was in the 2015 and 2017 Labour manifesto. So I think those are good things. It's a good first step. But that action in the housing white paper was not retrospective. So I think in my portfolio and in my work life actually, it'd be really good to have retrospective 3-year tenancies to give somebody. I mean, if you're paying rent through the nose, you should at least be able to stay where you are, or somebody's paying it on your behalf. To be able to at least get partway through primary school and, you know, be able to start to build your life. So I think longer tenancies would be a great step. So it was, but to make that retrospective, because as I say, more than a third of our residents live in the private sector, and so as it stands, none of that would apply to them.
But a lot of what you say, you reflect that on families. There are a lot of individuals who don't, you know, they're not going to get first priority.
No, of course. So, but coming to that, then I think the one of the things that I've talked about with our Director of Regeneration and of Housing Needs about the implementation of the Homelessness Reduction Act next year is, first of all, the lead-in time is a bit problematic, but they have modelled how it might work, and so actually how you've described it is very close to how our local authority and I imagine others would imagine people would come into, if you like, the system. And so having more of the types of street level but quite discreet places that people go to, like the greenhouse I was telling you about, so it gives people an address to register to vote. A lot of people live at this place, but they don't. They sort of go next door to the town hall, they vote. And they're street homeless, they have GP surgeries and so on, and they can begin to build, like you say, a bit of a background for something, and there's still the access. But as I said before, some of those people are people in work. The fact that somebody is street homeless doesn't necessarily mean that they're not, not going to be employed somehow.
In fact, the majority of students that I teach, they're homeless
Exactly.
and they're working.
And so just very briefly, I think one of the things that all of these good first steps are things in which I think I'd say as a Labour councillor, and I have been for a long time, I and other councillors of all persuasions would be probably very happy to try and make that happen, but the next step needs to be to give people a bit more security.
Can I just make a point, very quick point, what Molly states, is that the thing that we're not looking at is what are the reasons why people become homeless in the first place. There's a myriad of different reasons and social problems. Many of the people who sell the big issue are ex-forces. 3 weeks ago, we were remembering the fallen, yet we are forgetting the living. Okay, so it's very important to understand lots of these people have social issues, mental health issues. These are things that need to be identified. Okay, it's not just about being homeless because they can't afford to own a home or rent a home. It's often because they've been kicked out, they've been mentally or physically abused in domestic violence situations, they find themselves in this crisis. So what we need to do is identify, first of all, the reasons why people get there in the first place, and then try to find the solutions. It's not just about, and also just one point, I don't know why this has never happened. I grew up in Camden Town. Okay, it was quite a trendy place back in the 60s, in my hippie days. And my mum's first house was a Victorian house, a little Victorian house. And it was the days when people had posters, and Bob is too young to remember this, but on the posters there was no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, no nicks. So my mum then decided she wanted to go upmarket and sold her beautiful Victorian house and bought a place in Finchley. Okay, that house in Finchley is worth a fraction of the house that presently stands in Chalk Farm. This Victorian house in Chalk Farm is worth about 3-4 million quid. And unfortunately, my mother died 10 years ago, so I would have inherited that £3-4 million house. Instead, we inherited something. But that's another matter. But the point I'm making is, why can't housing be on par with inflation? So if my mother's house was on par with inflation, it would be worth about £300,000, not ridiculous £3 or £4 million. And so, I don't know why this is, I think every person has a right to a home. But let's face it, every human has a right to a home, a roof over their heads. And we need to be able to provide affordable homing. So let's take the housing out of the commercial market, not make it a profiteering thing. Because as Phil said, these drug dealers, they invest their billions in buying properties, which means that everybody else can't afford those properties. So we should be looking at those sort of things as well.
I just want to add a little point that Bob knows about this. Lord Bird currently, and I'd like you to all support him in this, has a new bill going to the Lords.
Absolutely.
What it is, well, it's a fantastic bill. What it says, if you lived in social housing, and yours is a wonderful group, I want to point this out. This is an amazing housing group. Yeah. And they are so brilliant and supportive. No, they are. I know this group. And Lord Bird is saying, if you've lived in one of these places for, 10, 20 years, you've got a credit history. Instead of having to go to wonga.com and Bright House and buy a fridge for £5 million, you actually can get the same rate of credit. Now, that's not to say that everybody's going to get credit cards and go crazy with their money. What it does, it means lots of young people who've lived somewhere 5 years have a decent credit history because they've paid their rent to the council, to the housing group, etc. So please look out for Lord Bird's. It's going through now, and if you can, write in and say, "Wow, what a great thing!" Because it could take 6 million people in the United Kingdom out of credit poverty, which is an astonishing number. No more wonga.com and I can get a loan if my mate guarantees it and puts his gold teeth in the basket. So think about that. So again, these
credit profit.
Well, that's the phrase I use. They've got a much cleverer phrase. I'm not very bright. But technically speaking, that I think part of what we're talking about tonight. Because as we all say, it's the what is the other thing that pushes you into homelessness? It isn't just landlords and drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It isn't. There's lots of other things.
Yeah.
A lot of the time you lose your job, And as Bob said, it's amazing how much money you need just to get even a rented flat now. They want sort of £6,000 deposit. And we have to be fair to landlords. I know a lot of people think this is bad, because there are also terrible people who make landlords' life a misery. You know this, where they wreck a perfectly good property. So not everybody is responsible.
I mean, all the noise he makes with the guitar, I'm telling you.
Asia? Okay, one more question, and then I think we don't want to miss out on the song.
Absolutely.
No,
Everyone's excited about the song. Please film. If you could, by all means, film performing it and tweet it, please. Thank you.
You know where it will not.
Gosh, there's a lot of pressure on the last question here, so I'm trying to make it as astute as possible. So I'm Asia. I work for a housing association, work for One Housing, and that's how I know Sam. But I'm also a conservative, so that's a bit of a dichotomy sometimes. Not at all. But I'm also running for council in Bromley as a conservative councillor there. And on my way to work today, I met someone, and he was a veteran, and he was homeless, and he, it just, I spoke to him, and a little bit emotional.
I'm like that every day. It's understandable.
He didn't have anywhere to stay. He had been sleeping on the street for about 2.5 weeks, and he just said, touch my hand. And his hand was freezing, and I called Street Link right away. And I said, I'm really concerned about this person, and can we get him some help? And they said, absolutely, we're going to go get him help. But he had moved down to Liverpool because he heard there's more homeless shelters in London. But of course, we have a lot of homeless here, and the council can only do so much. But at the center of this homeless crisis, I think it's about housing. We don't have enough homes. We aren't building enough homes, and Bob alluded to this. And this is where I feel that housing associations have so much to give and could do a lot more. Actually, there's 1,200 housing associations in England. There's only about 50 that are building any kind of significant numbers, and I'm really proud to say that One Housing is one of those kind of partners. We utilize to the full extent of our balance sheets to build as much homes as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, it's land, and we can't compete with these private developers who can pay billions sometimes for land and extremely expensive planning permissions. So I guess my question is maybe mostly to Bob. How can we kind of, either create more public land for social housing developers, or how do we, also try to persuade those housing associations who aren't developing to build?
Well, my solution to the housing associations that don't build, as I put to the Chancellor, was that we say to them, if you do not use the money in your balances, we take it off you. And it's a use it or lose it. We expect you to use that money by 10% a year for the next 10 years. Well, I don't care what sum it is, 10%. But if you don't use it, we're going to take that money off you, and we will apply it to the building of social housing. Because that is the way of a carrot and stick approach. I would equally say the cost of land is one of the key issues that prevents social housing being developed. There's lots and lots of publicly owned land, whether it's in the hands of, in London we talk about TfL, local authorities have some, and what local authorities should do, in my view, is rather than try and build up to building homes again, because this is one of the other challenges, they don't have the capacity to do this, but actually say to housing associations or people that can build homes, that here's the land, you build the homes on them, we'll get the planning permission for them, and then you can put the properties on. In the London Borough of Ealing, they built some system-built homes, which they aren't great, but taking the point that we're making here about do we turn over shops to build homes? These are purpose-built homes that can deal with people that are sleeping rough right now.
Absolutely.
And I'd rather see people in somewhere which is secure and they're warm and dry, rather than sleeping on the streets, even if it meant it's not great. It's not, It's not your lifetime dream of a place to live in, but it's better than sleeping on the streets right now. So they're container homes. But the trouble is, people think, oh, containers. But actually, having seen them and seen them firsthand, they are purpose-built in a factory, transported to the site, put on site. They're cladded, in an appropriate fashion. They've got all the services on them, and they're warm and they're dry, and people are out of the. Now that's something that Ealing has done. I think other local authorities could do that. I think you should have a look at that. Definitely. It's not the solution, but it's one contribution towards the solution. And I think coming to your final question, which we all have to get creative on identifying land that can be used and brought on the street. Today, the Peabody Trust are going to build, I think, 200 new affordable homes near to where I live, which is great. That's wonderful. They've always been a good organisation, but we need more and more of these small schemes. The other problem is with private developers, they will build out 300 homes on a site a year to maximise the amount of profit they make. And at the moment, there are 10 big housing developers in this country. There used to be, 10 years ago, there were 2,500. And because of the financial crash, they all disappeared off the face of this country. They all gave up work or went to work for the big housing developers, and they will build a maximum of 160,000 homes a year. So we need the extra 140,000 to come from somewhere.
Okay,
fantastic. Yeah. So Phil.
Please film this if you can. Take pictures and tweet it.
We're all going to meet up at the Red Line, which is just around the corner. So if you'd like to come and
Phil won't
join
be
us.
performing in the Red Line because he's too busy.
We're too busy drinking.
Explain the song, Phil.
Okay, very briefly, I do apologise because of course I'm not used to being dressed like a mortgage broker when I'm playing. And also, I'm not amplified, so you have to bear with me. But essentially, this song is the Big Issue single. It's available on iTunes and Google, and we're actually pushing it. We've been doing lots of publicity. So the song is actually, I talked to various vendors across the years, and it's from the perspective of a vendor and a person that's just on the street. And actually, to echo, our point about our veteran, it's the person that all you've got to do is just do what the song says. The guy you met, this is kind of his song. Got my story, got me a name. Yes, I've fallen, maybe I'm to blame, but I got dreams just like you for when our eyes meet. Someone like you can stop me walking down this lonely street. You can buy me coffee, you can say hello, talk about the weather, buy a paper, and on you go. Don't want something for nothing. You can see the light. Someone like you can stop me walking down this lonely street. Once I was loving, yeah. Once I was wild. Had me family, I was their child. And I got dreams just like you when our eyes meet. Someone like you can stop walking down this lonely street. Oh, I just want a place to lay my head, a place where I feel safe and loved and fed, like everyone. You can buy me coffee, oh, you can say hello, talk about the way you buy a paper, oh, on you go. Don't want something for nothing. You can like you stop me walking down this lonely street. I said someone like you, someone like me, someone like us can stop them walking down the lonely street. This lonely street, this lonely street.
Downloads as possible. So Ed Sheeran even has tweeted that he doesn't mind Phil being number one this Christmas. Well, that's not true. Just hoping they will do that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Phil. That was such a privilege to be in the room with you, hearing it. It's an amazing song.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite easy for.
Yes, better with the band.
You all could be the chorus.
Can I just have the name of the song when I'm tweeting?
It's called Walking Down This Lonely Street. It's the Big Issue song, Walking Down This Lonely Street, available from everywhere.
Yeah.
Is that
And
the
it's gonna
whole
be-
title? Walking down.
It's called the Big Issue song, Walking Down This Lonely Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see, if you want to hear Phil perform it again, come along on Friday, 12 and 1 at Waterloo Station on the main concourse. So it'd be great. So we'd love you all to come along and support it. And there's going to be a lot of big issue vendors there. It's going to be a very powerful and moving event. And we're taking it around the country, by the way. This just kicks off a tour of stations and getting politicians, local politicians, to come along and be part of this campaign to help end homelessness. Because we want to make homelessness history, if possible.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming tonight and contributing to this very important topic and issue. And hopefully, thanks to the work of what the panelists are doing and your Bill, Bob, and it's
Absolutely.
and
Act, not the Bill, it's act. It's an act now.
yeah, it's making, as somebody else said, it's making invisible people visible again. And it's incredibly important work.
And thank you for Parliament Street for putting on this event, and Patrick Sullivan as well.
So we'll be going to the red line now. So whoever wants to join and network and speak to us or speak to any of the panelists, if you'd like to join as well, please, you're all welcome to.